Welcome to From Adversity to Abundance, the go-to podcast for real estate entrepreneurs seeking not just to thrive, but to conquer with resilience and mental sharpness. Each week, join us as we dive into the compelling world of real estate through the lens of mental fitness, where challenges transform into opportunities. Get ready to transform your mindset and expand your understanding of what it takes to succeed in real estate. Let's explore these stories of triumph and resilience together.
Welcome, everybody, to another episode of the From Adversity to Abundance podcast. I am your host, Jamie Bateman, and I'm thrilled today to have with us Tanya Alvarez of Owners Up. She is the founder, and she has a lot of other things going on we're going to get into. I'm excited to hear your story, Tanya. How are you doing today?
Doing great. Thank you for having me. Absolutely.
This is going to be a fun one for sure. I haven't recorded in a little bit, so you're going to have to keep me on my toes. This will be fun.
Okay.
So for the listener who's unfamiliar with you, who are you and what are you up to today?
Yeah, so right now, I started my first business at 25, grew it over 1 million within the first year, sold it, invested in others, and I am actually doing Owners Up. It's something I wish I had on my journey of entrepreneurship. And what ends up happening is here I was training for the Boston Marathon. And even though I was a collegiate distance athlete, I still joined a team of people, even though I knew exactly what to do and what to train for, because just like business, running a marathon, you sign up, you're excited, and it's a long journey. And
Absolutely.
You want peers to encourage you, a coach to see your blind spots and kind of course correct you. And I realized that when I was growing my business really quickly, I didn't have anybody, and I wanted that constant feedback, that constant accountability, that system to move me forward and not be, let's be honest, a workaholic. There's so many workaholics. So that's what Owners Up is about. Think of it as a CrossFit for small businesses.
Okay, awesome. So just before we jump into your backstory, so for you personally, what does a day in your life look like? What's a typical day look like for you?
Wow, it's still different. Now I have 2 kids. I have a 1.5-year-old and a 3.5-year-old. So, you know how everybody always talks about do this in this morning, do this. I'm like, no, my mornings are, sometimes I wake up before them, but like be very quiet. I feel like they have bat ears and you can hear me and smell me. And so they wake up. So what I usually do is I wake up, and until they're out the door to go to daycare, my day doesn't fully start in the sense of my personal homework.
Sure.
It's all about them. And then after
it.
that, I make sure I have a ritual of really closing up my day and being present with my kid.
Love that.
And that's a hard one, I would say, for most entrepreneurs, because even though like you can be with your kids, but you're still mentally thinking about your business. And you think, oh, well, I'm here. My kids won't notice. Yeah, there's a certain energy. They can notice.
That's true. Kids are very insightful for sure. And I know you have some great processes for goal setting and frameworks and things like that we can get into in a bit. But I appreciate you keeping it real, right? It's like people love to put out their morning routine of 25, this cold plunge and whatever else. And that's cool. And that can work. And that's great. But the reality is it's not always, life is messy, especially as an entrepreneur. And you've got to be able to react and pivot and still kind of keep your eyes on the long-term prize, if you will. So let's jump into your backstory. I know you've dealt with adversity, and again, the show, we're here to inspire entrepreneurs, encourage people. Keep it real though, and let them know that you're going to go through hard times. We've all been through hard times. We're going to continue to go through hard times. It doesn't mean Tanya doesn't have any more adversity in her life. But I know you've been through some financial struggles in starting your business, and I know you've been through some health challenges as well. Where would you like to start with your backstory, Tanya?
That's a great question. And before I start on that one, I feel like if you're not being challenged, you're not growing.
I love that. Yeah.
Right.
Couldn't agree more.
So pressure, diamonds, right? So
absolutely.
Anybody who says, oh yeah, I have it all taken care of, that means you're just not growing. Maybe that's a season that you just don't want to grow. It's totally okay. Everything's in seasons.
That's a great point.
Yeah. So I was raised by a single mom who immigrated to the US from Colombia. She has, me included, 4 kids. And my oldest sister has a rare disease called osteogenesis imperfecta, which
Hmm.
is brittle bones. And that means that she can have, like, her bones are like pencils and she can break them very
Wow.
easily. So I found out that I had this after I ran half Ironman and I fractured my hip. So my severity isn't as bad, but right
Hmm.
now I'm at the age of 45 and I probably have, I don't know, I haven't got my bones scanned, but they're not as strong as most other people. So I could fracture, but because I
Hmm.
work out, and live a healthy lifestyle, I'm very fortunate.
Hmm.
So in the osteogenesis imperfecta, kind of like the worst is the baby starts breaking bones in the womb, in the stomach, and then they're born and some die 2 days after. And
Wow.
then the next level could be like a level of my sister's where she's a wheelchair user, and she breaks a
Hmm.
lot of bones. She's broken over
Yeah.
200 bones. And I would say one of mine would be the one of like mine is just like I've broken 2 bones
Hmm.
after a half Ironman. And the other one is I moved to Minnesota and I slipped on black ice and
Hmm.
then
Yeah.
fractured both my wrists when I had an 8-month-old. That was
Wow.
a whole thing of surrender.
Well, I love how yeah, absolutely. I can, I can imagine that. It's interesting you say that about you kind of alluded to the fact that it's really all about your perspective, because you could very easily be bitter and say that why me and why did I get this health condition, and most people don't have this brittle bone
Mhm.
condition, right? And so it's not fair, right? Um, but compared to most people who have the condition, you have it pretty good, it sounds like. And I don't want to put
Oh,
words in your mouth. I
I have
just,
it really good. And even when I
yeah,
fractured, I will say, when I found out running was my identity, and when I found out that if I continued running, I would have a hip replacement, I was a little down the next day. And then my
sure.
sister, who has OI, she says, after your bones are healed, you're gonna be able to walk and do
Mm,
things.
yeah,
And
yeah.
that like was like, boom, got me out of
Yeah,
it in
yeah.
days. And
Well,
so
I'll just chime in just briefly. And I won't go too far into this, but we actually just found out about, so my son is a teenager, and it's taken us 14 years to find out that he does have a genetic condition that's really rare. And again, I'll save this for another episode, but I shared with him the other day that when we just found this out, we shared this information with him as well. And so he's had some real challenges associated with this for his whole life. Um, but again, it's like, compared to most kids or people who have this genetic condition, that they call it a kind of a misspelling, um, he's really, really doing well. I mean, a lot of these kids have serious heart conditions and bone conditions and muscular conditions that, or they're not actually able to learn to speak ever. And he's certainly had struggles, and we've had a hard year, to be honest with you. But I'd simply say that it's all about your perspective. And I think, we're seeing this as we're really blessed, and he's really blessed that it could have been a lot worse. And actually, I told him that it's so rare that the hospital wants to study him, and so that he's pretty excited now to learn more about his own genetics and things like that. But
it's also
I
gonna be a
just
great story. That's what my sister always told me. She goes, you are gonna be so resilient and your story is gonna inspire others, and you get to create
love
that. A
that.
lot of people haven't
Yeah,
gone through that.
it's so true. Okay, so now, okay, at what age did this really hit you, or this is a lifelong thing you're dealing with? Um,
Yeah,
was there a kind of an inflection point in that part of your story at all?
well, it was one of those things where my sister, I've always lived like tomorrow isn't promised because of
Yeah,
her. And then I had to make a really hard decision when having my own kids. I had kids through IVF, so I could eliminate that gene moving forward. And
I
the
see.
hardest part about that is my sister was such a big impact in my life. And here I am removing the gene, right?
Yeah.
So for
Interesting.
generations moving forward won't have it.
Hmm.
That was a really hard one I had to sit with, and it made me who I am too.
Hmm.
So that's the whole story of the health thing. And then I learned running wasn't my identity. I can always create something new and explore new things. I went into cycling. I do a bunch of things, and I'm like, oh, I'm just creating myself every time. It wasn't a set identity. Sometimes
Sure.
at least for me, I associate, and that was like my identity. That's what people know me for. Oh my God, if I can't run, what's going to happen? Even in
Absolutely.
entrepreneurship,
Yeah,
right? When
for
you're
sure.
kind of scaling, and then you're like, oh, what happens if I make a wrong decision? You're like, I'm going to be known as the failed entrepreneur or whatever it is in your
Sure.
head. But
Yeah.
that's just part of the story. And when you start thinking about like, nobody listens to the person who has a perfect life. Nobody wants to hear that,
So
right?
true. No,
How did
absolutely.
Oprah become successful? Because she shared everything. And then you
So
hear
true.
that. And so that's what makes, gives your life more texture, more meaning.
I love that. Yeah. And we have had, we've talked on other episodes about, we had a professional baseball player who had a very short-lived career because he got injured, and his whole identity was that, and it's over. Who are you now? And he's very successful now. He's a very successful business owner and is crushing it. And you know, we keep in touch, and he's an inspiration. But it's just, it doesn't. It's more impressive actually if you can pivot and you know, continue down a different path and still have ups and downs, but find success and work your way through adversity and get to abundance. So let's talk about, so you've definitely dealt with health issues for sure. And we're not trying to check all the boxes. We know that everyone has dealt with health, relationship, financial challenges, you know, spiritual challenges. There are all kinds of plenty of challenges out there. You've definitely checked the box with regard to the health side of things. I think starting out, you started your first business at 25. Is that right? Let's talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, so, here my immigrant mom who's raising 4 kids on her own, single, and I got into, from my background, low income, all of it, the chances of me getting into a really good school, like a Ivy League type,
Yeah.
is very rare, right? And I
Sure.
got into Wellesley, and I was Wellesley
Wow.
College, and I was really fortunate, and it was an exciting time. And I remember walking in here. My roommate is third generation Wellesley. I don't know if people know what that means,
Yeah.
but it's pretty impressive. That means
Sure.
their life is pretty stacked. And I
Sure.
came in with my suitcase and masking tape around it because that's all my family could put together. And
Wow.
then they were looking around, they had their generations. They were excited to meet this person. And they look around, they're like, "We're your parents." And I was like, "Oh, I got dropped off and took a bus." And they're like, "Oh," and that was my first experience of that.
Sure.
And of course, I'm excited not to have my children have that, but that is a story I'll remember. So now going through
Absolutely.
that, the reason why I bring up my mother is here I am working for startups. And then I was like, I want to do my own thing. And she's like, do it. And I was like, well, what happens if I fail? And she goes, you'll be exactly where you are, working for somebody. And I was like, okay. And then I go, well, what happens if nobody wants to hire me? And she's like, you wouldn't want to work for a company like that. And then I went all in. There was no rich uncle, anybody helping me. It was basically, I had credit cards and shoot, a lot of determination, and I went for it. And
That's
so
awesome.
I went all in, worked crazy hours. Some people are like, how'd you do 1 million? I did. I worked crazy hours to make it happen, because I couldn't fail.
Sure.
Um, and then from during that whole journey, even when I was able to get to entrepreneur organization, you have to be over 1 million to be in
Yeah.
there. I would go in there. And at this time, this is back in like the early 2000s, it was like full of brick and mortar companies. And here I was, this young
Yeah.
Latina talking about marketing, performance-based marketing. They're like, what? They had no clue. And that's when I realized, wow, I don't have any support. I'm going to have to figure this out all on my own.
Wow. Yeah. The one thing I want to point out, I do point this out a good bit on the show, but you were bringing to your mother the what ifs. What if this happens? What if this happens? And she was actually presenting to you the even ifs. So even if you fail at this business, you're going to be back where you are anyway. So
Yeah.
who cares? And then you say, well, what if this happens? Well, even if that happens, and I think I don't know her story or anything, but just that wisdom and that perspective, that kind of big picture and long-term perspective, I think can really help people in decision making. And that's not to say everyone should jump into starting a business, but having that even if perspective can give you, confidence and stability in the chaos, if you will. But okay, so you start at 25, you have no money, you start a New York ad agency. How did you just how did you fund it? How did things go for that first year?
Got some clients immediately and then just proved it. And back then, this was in the wild, wild west of the internet when there was an affiliate marketing and it just, I could go throw some numbers and out back there. But so we approached it differently. We would go to a website and we would figure out when someone purchased kind of what's called a funnel. We would go through like the pages and then we'd say, hey, if we generate this leads or generate this sales, we want a percentage, and we would handle everything. So it wasn't us presenting to the client, like hire us for this,
Set amount.
$10,000 package. We were
Yeah.
performing space, and that was
Okay.
great. We performed.
Yeah.
And the biggest lesson I learned, because I was naive, right? I wanted to travel before Instagram was around. Remind you guys, I'm 45. So before all of this and was trendy, I was like, I want to go to Peru. I want to go to Machu Picchu. I want to travel all these places. How the heck can I pull that off? Well, the only way to pull it off, and I tell people to do this now, is take a 2-week off to a country where you have no access to internet. You'll realize if your business can survive without you. And
That's
so
great.
that also helped me understand, like, I remember heading to hike Machu Picchu, and at that time, there's no internet connection. So before that, I need to make sure that my team could handle any emergency, anything, what to do, all of it. I create systems I didn't even know I should do.
Sure.
And they were able to handle it, and I was able to create leaders from there and then take on more and more vacations.
I love that. And they say, I guess necessity is the mother of all invention or something like that, right? So you kind of had no choice if you wanted to take this 2-week trip to create these systems and rely on others. It's much easier said than done. It's easy for us to sit here and talk about this on a podcast. Oh, I just, left for 2 weeks, and it doesn't sound that crazy. I'm going on a trip for a week after Christmas, and I'm pretty sure I'll be working, to be honest with you, so much easier said than done to peel yourself away. That's when you really learn if you have a true business or not, or just a job where you work for yourself.
Or I wonder if you could just, I don't know, work for an hour, or the belief I put in myself. I said, no matter what my team does, there's nothing that I can't do that can clean up their mess.
And again, that's that even if. I love that.
I
told my team that before too. Like, hey, you can break stuff, but we can fix whatever you break. I mean, it's, not saying just throw caution to the wind entirely, but it's okay. We can fix it, whatever it is. Okay. So you got from 0 to 1 million in revenue in the first year. I mean, that's incredible. One of the other things I took away that when you were talking was that, that you got clients first. So one of the mistakes I've made in business, and every industry is different, but is the whole thought process of build it and they will come, and versus get some clients and then kind of build your business as you serve those clients. Can you speak to that at all? That kind of mindset?
By the way, I have done both mistakes.
Got it.
So one mistake I learned very quickly when we were building out a site, it was this like product view site, all this cool analytics. And we're like, this feature is going to be great. We didn't want to release it until that feature happened. And then guess what? We released the feature, crickets. Nobody freaking used it. And that was the biggest lesson I learned, because there was so much money we invested in that tech, just everything. And then So you always test it. I always tell people, test it. Minimum viable product, test it. If you want to sell something, a product, before you even make that jump,
Sure.
even if you're working for somebody, go sell it or get a case study and see if they were like really amazed by it. Now,
Yeah.
real estate's a little different. I don't know how you could
Sure.
test it, but
Yeah.
I'm sure
Yeah.
maybe there
No.
could
Well,
be.
yeah, we can get into, we'll save that for another episode, but certainly, I mean, this is the point of the podcast, to share mistakes we've made and lessons we've learned so that other entrepreneurs and the listener don't have to make those same mistakes. So, okay, so this was 20 years ago. Walk us through kind of, I mean, this is going to be a very broad brush, but your entrepreneurial journey since then.
So because all those crazy trips I did, I realized, wow, my team doesn't need me as much. This is pretty cool. And then I was like, I built a pretty cool team. Why don't, and all these other companies would come to me and say, hey, would you want to be part of my company? And I was like, sure, I'll take a percentage. Let me be your CMO. And then the
Nice.
thing is, my team could just come in. I did the strategy and it was executed. So I was kind of involved in a bunch of businesses, which was really cool. But then there was one time where I had 3 other partners. I was the only one who was single and had no kids and raising money.
You were doing all the work.
And then they wanted me to be the CEO
Got it.
and raise the money. And here I finally got somebody. We were about to sign the papers. And then I said no. And I pulled. And then the investor pulled. They weren't happy. But I'm friends with one of the partners still.
Mm-hmm.
That was a big, hardest decision, one of the hardest, because it was one of the things where it's like, I always wanted to be like in your 20s, especially from my background, there was a little chip on my shoulder that I wanted to be that entrepreneur, right?
Sure.
And there was this chance, but then I was like, wait, what about if I work myself? I never have family, I never have kids, because I know myself of one of those people who'll do everything to achieve it. And that's when I had to have a reality check.
Mm-hmm.
And what is it at all costs? It's kind of like running, right? I wanted to run in high school, to run and get into like Division 1, ended up at Division 3, even though I got full scholarships to Division 1 because of the education. And then I had to think, do I want to be a professional runner? Well, luckily
Right.
I didn't, because I would have figured out later on in my life that I wasn't able to full on. But the whole
Sure.
point is, what's the cost that you're willing to
Yes.
do? And I don't think
Right.
people understand that. They see like these happy reels of like entrepreneurship, but
Yeah,
you have to know the cost. So you know what you're
absolutely.
up.
I love that. That's very real. We try to keep it real on this on the show. And again, it's yes, I couldn't agree more. It's everything has a cost. Everything has pros and cons, right? Everything, if you're spending your time and your focus somewhere, there's an opportunity cost. And so it's not to say you shouldn't do whatever it is, but just know there's a cost to it. That's a great point.
And I
So
think,
you
by the
back.
way, most important, most people skip this, is really identifying your values and
That's huge.
analyzing what it is. And this is like a random story, but
Yeah.
I didn't get married until later on in life. And I would be one of those people who would be in relationships and somehow was like, I didn't want to commit. Then finally I was like, okay, I need to be in a relationship.
Hmm.
And when I analyzed my values and then rank them, I was no longer in that gray area of meeting people. You ever met somebody and you're like, everything's gray up, but you keep going because you see everything else is great? So for example, I was dating this guy who was in Series B, entrepreneur, family oriented. But guess
Yeah.
what? When we would get together, it was almost like if I fit in his schedule. And that's not what I wanted, even though my
Sure.
values, so I had to rank my values to see what it was important. So if I wanted to be one of those people who was kind of like, we were a power couple or whatever you call it, and like we met each other and it was like that, that wasn't my value. But I
Right.
needed to know that before I continued to invest in.
Sure. You didn't want to be just waving in the hallway and
Yeah. And some people commit to that.
Right. Absolutely. Okay. So you've had tons of ups and downs with the on the business side of things, um, I guess walk us through kind of the last 5 years. I know you've had two kids. How has that affected, you know, for the mothers out there who, or you know, I guess, you know, females who might become mothers, right? And are thinking about starting a business and maybe want to do it all, or, you know, what advice do you have for someone that's thinking about running a business, starting a family? What are some takeaways?
Um, I'm just trying to think of the biggest takeaway. It's almost like running your business and going on vacation. You need
Mm,
to be able to delegate. I think I know that I coach and mentor a bunch of entrepreneurs that still feel that they're the only ones who can do it.
I
And
see.
if you're the only one who can do your thing, then you
Yeah,
don't have a business,
sure. Makes
right?
sense.
And it's a hard one to kind of swallow, right? And it's not saying that like you always want to have some of your skills replace taught, or else you're going to be a prisoner to your own company. And I think there's steps. It's not like a one thing that's right away. So
Sure.
in this case, before I even had kids, I wanted to make sure, like what we do is we have entrepreneurs in groups of 5 and we have a coach. So I needed to know that when I was on maternity leave, that these coaches can handle everything and move forward. And that was a lot
Mm,
of training, a lot of upfront things. The cool thing about where we are in this world right now,
yeah.
AI is phenomenal. Like here's
Yeah.
a quick tip for anybody. Anytime you hear yourself saying, oh, this task is just, it's 1 minute, I can do it faster than teaching.
Hmm.
Don't put yourself in that mindset. I want you to go find Loom. I think Loom is
Yeah.
free.
Yeah.
Uh, and record the thing and think it out like as you're doing stuff. Like,
I
let's
love
say
it.
it's as simple as writing an email. Go to your inbox. I'm writing this email. I'm going
Yeah.
to write this message. Like, and that is a
Now you're
bunch
speaking my
of things.
language. My team is they're probably tired of me talking about Loom. I mean, I think I've done 3 or 4 Loom videos this morning
Oh,
already,
what
but
was your record on Loom? I've somehow got the
oh,
top
I'm not sure.
4%. Did you see?
Okay, wow. I'll have to check that out. But it is free to an extent, and then it's not free anymore, just like most of this software. But couldn't agree more. It's like think about the next, you're going to do this task again, most likely, right? Or someone's going to have to
Yes.
do it. If it's anything that's going to be done again, record it. And
Mhm.
if it's worthless in 6 months, delete the video. It's not that big of a deal, right? So, but that can absolutely help with, you know, workflow and just delegating and automating things. Um, so
Also, by the way, Zoom is definitely worth paying for. I don't know what I
yeah,
pay. The
it-
AI is phenomenal on that. It'll
yeah,
even make your
it
job
is.
easier.
Absolutely. Okay, so you kind of prepared to have kids and got your team ready, and you know, but you knew there would be it sounds like it
By the
made
way,
your
I had
business.
my first kid March 25th, 2020 in New York City.
Wow.
And
Wow.
and
Yeah.
my partner, here I am, my partner, and was not allowed in the hospital. It was a week where in New York City,
Everything
no
was shut down.
to the hospital. He
Wow.
like literally dropped me off like he was dropping me off to the airport.
That is crazy. I
There was
mean,
nothing that could prepare me for that one, by the way.
yeah, no, no. That's yeah. Well, and that's life and entrepreneurship certainly throw curveballs at
Yeah.
us, right? Um, yeah, I mean, I imagine that was a challenging, you know, say first 6 months or so, first year, I would presume. What was that like that first year with your first child?
So we lived in a high-rise Manhattan building. And remember during that time in COVID in New York City, it was like the peak, and you didn't know if like you're still sanitizing your groceries. So
Sure.
imagine going down an elevator and trying to hold your breath for more than 50 floors and then covering your baby because you had no clue if the
Right.
kid that you've been trying to have, because I've been trying to have, I had a
Mm,
7% chance of having
mm,
one kid. I have
mm.
2. And
Wow.
now you're going through this pandemic and you're like, oh my God, I finally have this kid. Like, hopefully he
Yeah.
doesn't die because of COVID or something,
Right. Right. Sure.
So getting past that, then I lived in New York City for 20 years, and then I can run my company. I've made sure that any company I've always started up, I can run it from wherever. And my husband had a great opportunity in Minnesota. We don't have any family and friends here. And we moved here in August 2020.
Okay. Wow.
And so we're here, and we really love it, which is surprising for me because I never, New Yorkers, once you're there for a while, it's hard to leave.
Sure. Absolutely.
So that was a big change.
For sure. I know one of the personal interview topics you've talked about before is how you built your advisory board to meet your husband. Can you touch on that briefly?
Yeah. So part of it, what I was saying is literally like writing down your values. And then I had to analyze like, what do I do as a default? And then I found people who, this is a quick version of it, but found people who had happy marriages and people I respect. And then they had to hold me accountable on dates, and they were actually swiping for me on Tinder. Okay.
Oh,
so
wow.
I would have not swiped on my husband because of one picture. I was in this, like super little, like, oh boy, what is that picture? Did he could have done a better picture. Where the other person's like, oh, look at everything they wrote. This is great. So anytime they had to swipe, I had to go on a date with the person. And then I had to go on a date more than one time. And instead of finding everything wrong with the person, I had to find great things about them. So it's this whole accountability because I think we do a lot of mindset stuff, and mindset isolated doesn't work. Everyone always tells you, if you go to any personal development stuff, they always say, find others, bring this to others. It doesn't work without it. It's like, if you, I don't know, health wise in our house, like I'm lucky, my husband is on the same page. We have really healthy food. There's nothing where I'm like, kind of like, oh no, here's, tempted. There you go. Yeah. So you have to align yourself. It's really good to have other people. And that's me doing it on myself, that having that accountability, finding somebody, I would have slipped into my old patterns, and I wanted to actually make that change.
Makes sense. And it just sounds like you're very intentional about things. And one of the ways you hold yourself accountable is to have other people hold you accountable and have that community, which I know works into your business world as well. That's critical. I mean, you talked right early on about getting that group to being a part of the group for running and holding you accountable for running. And people talk about, well, why do you why does that person need a coach? They're amazingly fit. And it's like, well, that's why they're fit, because they have a coach and they have a community. And that's, Tiger Woods needs a coach, right? I mean, everybody who excels at anything.
Everybody has like a squad, and people don't realize that. This self-made is total myth.
I love that. And look, you came from not much, right? It's, I mean, financially, and you've overcome quite a bit, but I couldn't agree more. I hate the whole self-made thing myself. It's just, it doesn't exist. Certainly you have made decisions and and your own personal mindset and behaviors are big factors in your success, no doubt. Right. But you couldn't have done it alone. So I love all that. So,
By the way, based on that, what most people don't think is like, they assume that successful people always have this amazing mindset, determination. You do. There are times where you're going to get slapped.
Absolutely.
Every professional, everyone gets it. And you need people to kind of like remind you of who you are and why you're that. Because when you're down, like I'm sure you've been through it where you're like, is my business going to go down, or what's going on? Or like, and you need that support to get you moving forward and get you back on track.
100%. Let's fire off. I'll fire off some rapid fire questions, and then we'll talk more about your business today and how you're helping people. What is one thing that people misunderstand about you, Tanya?
That's a great question. Such a great question. I
say rapid fire, and that one usually stumps people. To be honest,
that's not a rapid fire.
That's not a rapid fire one, but
I think I actually got one. That when they see me, they think that I had it all together, that I had this amazing upbringing, that I must be lucky. Right. So they don't realize everything that I had and the community that built me who I am.
Love that. what is one of your biggest failures or regrets? Something that you would love to be able to do over, even if you've learned from it and something good has come out of it. What would you classify as one of your biggest failures or regrets?
These are not fast. I'm just trying to think of the biggest,
Do you make any mistakes in your first year in business that you would do over, would do differently?
it's funny because I've already had the story in my head. Like I do a real good practice of journaling and saying, okay, this failed. Like, how do I frame it? What do I learn
Yeah,
from it?
sure,
So now the
sure.
story's already in there that I don't even have the regret. It's so
Sure.
weird.
Well, that's good. That's good.
So maybe the regret could be like giving people more opportunities in relationships, right?
Okay.
Because as I told you, I would
Yeah.
swipe or like
Yeah.
just wasn't committed as much.
Sure. Okay.
That was a
Look,
weak one. Weak question, weak
no.
answer.
I mean, it's a pretty important one, I think, but yeah, if overall, if you could go back and give your 18-year-old self some advice, what would that be?
That to be vulnerable and to
Okay.
share themselves. Because I always had to come across like had everything together. Even that story of the whole suitcase and the masking tape,
Yeah.
like that took me a while to actually be like, yeah, I did that, but instead
Yeah.
I was always trying to fit in. So growing up, in a household where we didn't look like everybody else, we
Yeah.
were so busy fitting in. And now I realize that the key is just to be different. And
Yeah.
that took me a while. So it's almost telling that 18-year-old embrace why you're different. And that's going to be your
Sure.
strength later on.
Love it. If you could have coffee, I don't know if you drink coffee, but if you could have coffee or a drink or tea or anything with any historical figure, who would you choose? They could still be alive today.
One I would love to have is Sarah Blakely,
Okay.
the founder of Space. She's one of the
Yeah.
few that actually raised their family and build a business.
Awesome. We have not had that answer on the show. If you were given $10 million tomorrow, Tanya, just no strings attached, whatever you want to do with it, what would you do with it?
I would invest back into a community and
Okay.
empower them and try to have it in the sense of like empowering them so that revenue continues to impact others. So
Mm.
probably maybe through entrepreneurship even more or
Hmm.
building a school or doing something along those lines.
Great answer. If you had to eat one meal for the rest of your life, just pick one meal that you'd eat every day for the rest of your life, what would that be?
Jeez. I feel like I eat chicken almost every day. So I guess continue chicken. I don't know.
It's a good
But
one.
actually, have you ever heard that guy? I think the author's name is Mark Manson or something like that. And
Yeah, I think I know who
he
you're
has a
talking about.
great book. And he's like, when you
Yeah.
think about entrepreneurship, think about eating your favorite dessert or whatever it is and eating it every single day. And if you're not bored of that, then you should start that business.
That's great advice. I think is he the one that wrote The Subtle Art of Not Giving an
Yeah.
F, or is it okay?
Yeah, that's him.
We'll just keep it clean and say F, but you know. Um, what's a struggle that you're facing in your business right now?
Right now, it is more in the sense of doing my own copywriting. I want to start writing. I'm going to be writing a book soon. And I also have dyslexia.
Hmm.
So that's one of the big challenges. Like I just knew I had to work harder on that. So getting myself comfortable with writing and sharing my
Hmm.
stories.
Okay. Well, we had fairly recently Juliet Hahn on the show. She's her own podcast talks about dyslexia and how she overcame it, and she's really good at storytelling and helping others tell their story. So
Oh,
might have
wow.
to,
I'm definitely going to
yeah,
check her out. That's
yeah,
great.
might have to connect you guys, you two. Um, what's one piece of advice that you'd give someone starting out in their career, an entrepreneur who's starting, say, maybe an ad agency? What's one piece of advice that you'd give them right now?
To anybody who wants to be an entrepreneur and even an agency is first go to your network. do a simple email and say, hey, I'm doing this. Do you know anybody who would benefit from this? Love to chat with them. Nobody leverages their network, and then they forget that their network might know other people. And then get your first 5 people. All it is 5. Even if you have to do free, get a case study, and then go all in.
That's fantastic advice. And one of the themes in this episode has been just people, right? And community and network and helping each other, which I love. Yeah, absolutely. Instead of the whole build it and they will come thing, it's like, no, play to your strengths. Who do you know that has done this before or can help you do this? And then go get 5 clients. I love that. That's great. If you could try any occupation other than what you've done before, something totally random, what would it be?
You tell the questions that stop me, huh? Because entrepreneurship, I feel like
you
can
wear a
always
lot of hats in
win,
entrepreneurship. You've check a lot of boxes
right? So in
already.
entrepreneurship, like I remember a story of my mother. I wanted to be a trainer for a killer whale trainer. I was obsessed with orca. And then she said, instead of being, as a parent, you're just like, she's an immigrant. She wanted to kind of gear me towards something, I don't know, I guess revenue making. She's like, imagine if you can own SeaWorld or Miami's Aquarium, then you can train with them all the time. I was like, yeah. So in my head, I'm like, just get involved in the business somehow.
There you
So I
go.
haven't thought about it, what the next one is. Maybe it would be, if I was going to do anything, is focus on this big problem of education, right? Now that I
Sure.
have kids, I'm starting to see like the levels of the education, what's going on, what is that future like? So
Sure.
maybe dive into that.
Yeah, I love that. Awesome. We'll talk about Owners Up a little bit before we wrap up. What is Owners Up and who is it for? Who do you work with? Who do you serve?
So we work with B2B service-based entrepreneurs who are in their 6 figures and want to go into up to, I would say, 3 million. I think 3 million at that point is a whole nother level of leadership and training. But it's
Sure.
really about entrepreneurs who have a tendency to know that they're achievers. They work hard, but then now they have like a family and they want to be very present, and they want to know how to make that work-life fusion. And not only the fusion, but living a life that empowers them. So for them, it's kind of running a company that's profitable, and maybe want to get to the point where that it's like they only have to put 5 hours in, they invest in another one, and they have a portfolio going on, but being really present so that their kids know them as my parent was always here. My parent was always present. And how
Sure.
we go about that is one of the things that, I don't know, I experience this sometimes too when I don't have it, is that sounding board. Even if I have employees or a team, I need other peers to bounce ideas off of, that know
Sure.
exactly how it feels like when the pressure's on you, all those salaries, what is that?
Yeah.
And then helping me make strategic decisions, right? And then holding me accountable, because one thing is, as an entrepreneur, you come from like some sort of school, some sort of structure, and then you start your own business, and then you have to build your own structure. And then guess what? You can justify things and kind of play in your default. So I call it kind of moving. No, that's not important. I'm going to move this deadline here because you're the boss.
You're the boss. Sure. Yeah.
And so
you can move it there, but
yeah,
like we talked about earlier, there's a cost, right? There's a consequence. So maybe you shouldn't be moving that deadline. But you're absolutely right. You are in charge, and so it's easy to kind of let things slide or move different things, but also entrepreneurship can be a lonely space, even if you're busy and working hard and interacting with people, not everybody knows what that's like. And so I think having a community like you provide, and that group-based accountability structure, and it sounds like some coaching and things. I think that's huge. And I think more than ever, people are really in need of this kind of, I think this is, I mean, just with the virtual world, which is great, it has certain benefits for sure. But I think people are very hungry, especially entrepreneurs are hungry for community, accountability, all the things you've talked about already so much. So what does it look like if somebody signs up tomorrow? What does their
I
next
also
year
want
look
to
like?
say that I've been struggling with the word community. I'm big on
Okay.
community, but the thing is, I've been in communities
Yeah.
where it's the same 10% of people interacting. It's kind of like the people in the
Mm,
classroom where it's the people who are going to raise their hand, everyone else isn't participating, right? So when it gets
sure.
so big, you can hide and you
Sure.
can
So
say
this
you're
is a,
part of a community.
yeah.
So
So
this
you
is
keep it small.
people
Yep.
five
Absolutely.
people that you can actually be okay with disclosing everything that's going on. Because I don't know about
Yeah.
you, I have a hard time disclosing in a big
Yeah.
community. I've never
Yeah.
been one of those people who raise my hand.
hmm
So
For sure.
that's what it is. So what it is first thing we do once someone enrolls and we figure out that you have that growth mindset and you want to make that change because we're not into people who just want to hustle. We do an audit and then we help you understand what your default is and where your strengths are, like where you should actually be growing. Because
Okay.
sometimes as an entrepreneur, we like to do what's natural to us, right? Instead
Sure.
of what we need to do. And then
Okay.
from there, you have a weekly 1 hour call where you're held accountable to
Mm.
what it is that you decided. And we do it in a fun way where accountability is not by having someone paying like, hey, if you don't do this, you have to do $10. It's more what we found accountability works is you take on a challenge that's going to move you, but then it's immediately. So if they miss a goal or something that they said, they have to sing a song in front of a group.
Oh,
And that
wow.
works. So what ends
Wow.
up happening is your inner critic, who usually would push off this whatever this task that you need to be held accountable to, you're like, oh, I'd rather not sing a song. I'll just do this
Yeah.
task.
Just do
And so
it.
it
Right.
gets over your perfectionism too.
Interesting. Yeah. Yeah, because that's a huge part of entrepreneurship because I can be pretty analytical, but it's like it has to be good enough or else it's just not going to work. It's not going to
Yeah.
be done. So, yeah, you do have to get over that perfectionism. Um, yeah, I'm in a mastermind group that's a little bit of a larger group, but then we have smaller groups now that are where we meet monthly, and it's kind of a similar, not the exact same thing, but a similar thing where I feel much more comfortable opening up as opposed to, sharing in the larger group and occupying everyone's time. And we really get to know each other on a, much, just much better in the smaller group. So, um, that's great. So what's the business look like as we wrap up here? What's your business look like in the next year? What's 2024 have in store for you?
So 2024, I will have some part of my book done. And the journey of the book is to help people understand that sometimes you have to build your squad that you need to achieve any monumental goal. And I think that I didn't realize this till later on that I was really lucky to have my family who was super supportive. But there's other people who have a family that might not be encouraging them, and not because they don't believe in them. It's just that they're scared, like, oh, if we don't want, like, if you do this and you fail, we
Yeah,
don't want you to be
it's
sad, or, we want you to be financially
sure.
successful. So sometimes you don't have the right support around you. And
Yeah.
so how do you create that? And how do you find
That's
the
great.
people who are going to move you forward? And so I
Yeah,
believe that anybody, no matter where you're at, if you have the right squad, you can achieve any monumental goal.
love it. There's that intentionality again. That's really good. So speaking of a book, I didn't ask you, do you have a book or two that you could recommend for our listener?
There was a book I just recommended. It was Dan
That's
Martell,
true.
Buy
You
Back Your
did.
Time. Yeah,
That's right.
it's a really good one.
Yeah. Dan Martell, Buy Back Your Time. I think you recommended that one to me before we hit record. So that's really good. Awesome. And then of course your own book, I'm assuming you don't have a title yet for it.
Yeah, I thought about Squad Up, but we're still playing around with it.
Got it. Awesome. That's great. Well, Tanya, I know you got to run. I know you got to get to your workout, and we appreciate you squeezing us in here. Where can our listeners find you online?
Yeah, they can find me on my Instagram, Tanya C Alvarez. So the letter C Alvarez, and then DM me and I'll send you any frameworks you guys want, accountability, or how to get there. Achieve your goal.
Fantastic. Last question. What is one question I have not asked you that you wish I had? Anything you want to cover?
I think that I don't know, but a good one. I think that everyone always assumes it's about doing and achieving, but in order to be your best self, in anything, you got to work on yourself. So personal development is a huge one. Go and start investing in yourself. And even though you feel like you can get it from a book, I think someone told me this and it's a little crude, I guess, but they said, imagine reading a book about sex. Right. And then doing it, right? There's sometimes you only have to do it. And I was like, that is hilarious about personal development. So there's only so much that you actually have to do. Because a lot of people are like, I can read it. And it's like, there's a part of reading and then the action. So take the action, guys, and get yourself into whatever programs, personal development, whatever it is, or read a book and create a group around it so you guys can like practice and analyze and do it.
Fantastic. Tanya Alvarez, this has been a great chat. We've covered a lot. I'm not going to go through it all right now, but this has been fantastic. A lot of nuggets for sure that we're going to be able to take away from this. And you've got a ton of experience with entrepreneurship, health challenges, motherhood in a challenging time for sure, with COVID and the pandemic and everything, and many things we haven't covered, but I just want to thank you for your time. This has been a blast. So thanks a lot, Tanya.
Thank you for having me. It was awesome.
And to the listener out there, you're welcome, Tanya. And to the listener out there, thank you for spending your most valuable resource with us, and that is your time. Thanks, everyone. Take care.
Thank you for joining us on From Adversity to Abundance. We hope today's episode has equipped you with valuable insights and practical advice to elevate your real estate journey. For more inspiring stories and resources, visit us at www.adversitytoabundance.com. If this episode has inspired you, please share it with a friend who could also benefit from our conversation. Together, let's turn adversity into abundance. Until next time, keep building your mental fitness and your real estate empire.